like to begin with the profound words from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47. Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, ma karmafal heturbhuhu, ma te sangotsva karmana. This verse reminds us to dedicate ourselves to our duties with sincerity, without attachment to the results. Namaskar and very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Bharat Bodh Kendra, Habitat Library and Research Center, India Habitat Center, and Indian Council of Philosophical Research, I extend a heartfelt welcome to all present to the discussion in the IHC ICPR Study Circle lecture series titled Family Morality and the Absolute, comments on the first 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. This is one of the many initiatives taken by our Honorable Director, Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, to create meaningful conversations around India's knowledge systems, culture, and heritage. We are honored to have a distinguished panel this evening, Professor Mrinal Miri, retired Professor of Philosophy, Professor Nataraju, Adarasupally, Chairperson, Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Professor Bindu Puri, Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We are warmly welcome to our panelists and sincerely thank them for joining us this evening. To begin today's session on a truly auspicious note, I request our esteemed dignitaries to come forward for the lighting of the lamp and also request Ms. Gita Balasubramaniam, Madam, to join us for lighting of the lamp. Now I respectfully request Gita Balasubramanian ma'am, advisor HLRC and HLC, to kindly come forward and present the mementos to our esteemed speaker as a humble token of our deep gratitude and appreciation. Thank you, ma'am. We have received the information that Professor Nataraju is held up and is unable to join us today. As the outset, I would like to inform you that our esteemed director, Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, is traveling and hence couldn't join us today. He has conveyed his warm greetings and best wishes. Now I would like to briefly present an overview of Bharat Bodh Kendra and the significant initiatives undertaken. A few months ago, Bharat Bodh Kendra was established under the leadership of Director Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh. It was inaugurated by Shri Manohar Lal Khattarji, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. The primary objective of the Kendra is to promote Indian culture and the art and to create greater awareness about India's rich heritage and civilizational legacy. This is a dedicated segment in HLRC. Under this initiative, we launched Samlap, the discourse series, a platform for intellectual dialogue and meaningful discussions. As part of this series, we organized a discussion on Dr. Reela Hota's book on Odissi dance, followed by an engaging exchange of ideas on its artistic and cultural dimensions. We had second discussion in the series on the book In Her Footsteps, Women Who Made India by Mandira Ghosh, reflecting on the remarkable contributions of women in shaping India's history and civilizational journey. Recently, we held a discussion on Guru Dr. Shobana Narayanji's latest book, I Am a Fleeting Moment. We aim to explore the aesthetic and therapeutics aspects of art through various engagements. A workshop on the Natya Shastra was conducted to understand its various elements. The IHC ICPR Study Circle lecture series is also being organized under the Bharat Bodh Kendra Habitat Library and Research Center. Today, we are conducting the third lecture in the series of 12 lectures that are planned. We have also started the quarterly online ISC newsletter Sambhashan. Under the leadership of Director Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, on 21st February 2026, on International Mother Language Day, Bhasha, a dedicated library section, was inaugurated by Dr. Ram Madhavji, President of India Foundation, and HUDCO Chairman Shri Sanjay Kulshresthaji, to celebrate India's diverse linguistic heritage. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Anshika on the dais and request her to kindly take over the proceedings. Thank you very much.
A very good evening to all. I welcome you all to the third lecture of IHC ICPR Study Circle. It is truly heartening to witness the continued engagement of this august gathering in this collaborative academic endeavor. It is my privilege to formally introduce the distinguished dignitaries who have graced today's event with their presence. We are honored to have with us the co-convenor of the study circle, Professor Bindu Puri, whose dedication and academic insights has been instrumental in shaping this initiative. Professor Puri is an eminent scholar of modern and contemporary Indian philosophy, as well as moral and political philosophy. Currently, she teaches at Center for Philosophy, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Puri has published over 60 research papers in edited volumes and leading philosophical and interdisciplinary journals. She has written 4 major monographs, the most recent being Rabindranath Tagore, Peace in an Enchanted World, Routledge 2025. She has also co-authored with Professor Mrinal Miri, Gandhi for the 21st Century, Religion, Morality and Politics 2023, and has edited 9 books. Notably, her edited volume, Reading Sri Aurobindo, Metaphysics, Ethics and Spirituality, Springer Nature 2022, was translated into German in the year 2024. Her most recent co-edited book with Professor Sachidanand Mishra is Indian Nationalism, a Reader, ICPR, New Delhi 2025. Professor Puri is also the general editor of Springer Nature book series, Indian Philosophy, Past and Present. An experienced academic administrator, Professor Puri has chaired the departments of philosophy at both University of Delhi and Jawaharlal Nehru University and has been a chairperson of governing body of Aditi Mahavidyalaya, University of Delhi. She has been a member of Academic Committee of Army Cadet College at Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, and currently serves on Academic Committee of Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie. Professor Puri is a member of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, ICPR, and serves on its governing body. She has delivered several prestigious international lectures, including the M.K. Gandhi Lecture on Peace and Humanities in the year 2017 for the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Council, Ottawa, and the Sugden Oration at Queen's College, University of Melbourne in year 2023. It is my honor to now request Professor Puri to address the gathering and introduce today's theme. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think the bio note was a bit overdone, but anyways, I welcome all of you to the third lecture in this series. As I have reiterated, this enchanted space, the Habitat Center, is conceived around objectives like promoting an integrated physical environment in a coordinated manner. And I'd like to emphasize that we cannot overthink the importance of this integrated physical environment. Indeed, one can recall the famous critic of the Enlightenment modernity, Herder, who in yet another history of philosophy of history spoke about the unique spirit of a people, Vogeist, developing organically according to its own principles, but influenced very immensely by the environment where people live. And he argues that human beings are embedded in nature, which I think is such a beautiful idea. And therefore he talks about climate. And climate is used in a holistic sense, refers to the entire natural environment. And when you consider the importance of this climate, because of many things that have happened in our world, we can appreciate the significance of asking whether we can think of any other way outside of Enlightenment modernity to look at the relationship between the human and non-human world. And this question, of course, takes us to Indian philosophy, to the philosophy of the tribes. And that is really the theme of the present study circle, Indian philosophy and how it looks at the relationship, past, present. So to begin with, the immediate question is that when we have all sorts of academic discussion in environmental ethics, why should we relook at the relationship at all? I'd like to just briefly say there are two ideas. One is that we have to learn to resolutely think from within the Indian mind. And the second, of course, asks whether there's anything distinctive in the Indian tradition which it brings to understanding this relationship. So why should we think resolutely from within our mind? Well, because for one thing, the Enlightenment makes a dramatic break between nature and the human world. And there is a correlative negation of the natural world as a sphere of absolute values. And we normally think that reason and desire, is which is operative in the human world, is really the source of all value. So people may, of course, say that what does it matter what philosophers think? This is an armchair activity carried on by dons in their studies. But if you look at how the world has changed because of this way of looking at the environment, we can see why we should look at an alternative view a little more seriously. And a related argument comes from K.C. Bhattacharya, who says if you don't think from within your mind, that mind is just going to lapse under the burden of ideas learned from the West. And he says the universalism and the rejection of cultural specificity in the West should also be critically engaged with, because universalism is always in the making. And the only thing truly universal is a kind of loyalty to their own ideals that human beings have, and an openness to other ideals. So this rejection of a worldview developed over centuries creates a sterile hybridization of ideas. So we must interrogate this relationship. So I go now to the second point. The second point is there anything distinctive about the Indian point of view? From centuries past, from the age of the systems, you see that there is a specific view of the relationship between the human being and the environment. You look at the notion of Rita, and then you look at the notion of order or Rita, then you look at the notion of dharma in Mimamsa, in Vedanta. In Sankhya Yoga, you find a dualism, right? But the interesting point is both are absolutely equal, Prakriti and Purush. Apart from Sankhya, other systems are emphasizing that there's a shared essence, interconnection, continuity between the human and non-human world. And this continues into modern Indian philosophy in the work of Gandhi, Tagore, Sri Aurobindo. Tagore speaks that the consciousness of the real within me seeks its own corroboration in the touch of the real outside me. The Bhagavad Gita, of which we are going to speak today, becomes very important for the enlargement of the possibilities of the self, which come from a unified view of the cosmos. Even the idea of Nishkam Karma, the rejection of ends, is really a rejection of instrumentality. So you cannot instrumentalize other human beings and nature. You have to recognize absolute equality in the cosmos. And you see the divine vision where the whole cosmos is integrated. Nearer our times, Sri Aurobindo speaks about the secret of the Ved. He speaks about the hymns, and he speaks about how praying to friendly gods, gods of fire, rain, wind, dawn, night, earth, is really, for all kinds of things, is really, because there is the idea that you see God in the highest covering heaven. You feel divine existence like an encompassing ocean and live in its boundless presence as pure air. So that's really the closest you get to the divine. And he also speaks about how that this prayer is not just for the purpose of ritual, but because you realize how important integrated knowledge is and how important it is to the realization of divinity. And Tagore always says that we can ignore what is there in the blue of the sky only if we suppress our sensitivity to reality, which is what makes us human. This is the insight we can recover from the Indian tradition, and this is present in an unbroken line from past to present, and this is what the study circle hopes to uncover through lectures this year. With these words, I invite Professor Miri to address us on the Gita, and I think he can do it from there itself.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I've been put down as someone who's going to talk about the first two or three chapters of the Gita. Well, in a way, I am going to do that. But before I start talking about the Gita, let me confess to one or two of my weaknesses in talking about, in thinking about, in lecturing about the Gita. You see, I started learning Sanskrit only very recently, in about a couple of years. And I can read Sanskrit, but not the Gita kind of Sanskrit, for which I always need dictionary, good dictionary. And obviously I have to turn to translations of the Gita. There are good translations, possibly, but there are also quite unreliable translations. And I say unreliable from my own, on the basis of my own judgment, not on the basis of judgments made by others, because I see that many of these, not many, that some of the recognized, well-respected translations are translations, no doubt, but also they are interpretations of the Gita in a way in which the translator's own views enter in a kind of, sometimes in a subtle way, sometimes in not such a subtle way. So those are some of the difficulties. And my weakness, as I said, my weakness is the weakness of not, my primary weakness, and not knowing Sanskrit as well as I should know. I'm still trying. I'm an old man, and I don't know how many years of trying will be there for me, but I'm still trying to make my Sanskrit a little bit more useful than it is at the moment. So you have to forgive me if you find that I haven't read the Gita in the way I should have because of my lack of knowledge of Sanskrit. Secondly, I approach the Gita from the point of view, quite naturally, from the point of view of philosophy. I think of Gita as a work of philosophy, as a tremendous, very profound work of philosophy. And of course, there are all kinds of other things in the Gita, which other things are also very important. I don't want to go into those. But I want to see it, and I read it as an essay or many essays on philosophy, philosophical issues, philosophical problems, as I can articulate them. So that is my approach to the Gita. I don't approach it as a scholar of Sanskrit. I don't approach it as a spiritual kind of, as somebody seeking spiritual enlightenment. Of course, there is talk about spiritual enlightenment in the Gita, which I shall refer to very soon. But I don't approach it as somebody who is seeking for spiritual salvation, spiritual, somebody who seeks spiritual kind of, what shall I say, establishment in spirituality, the kind of sthapita in spirituality. I'm not reading Gita in that kind of way. First of all, in the two chapters, second chapter, in fact, in the first chapter, I think it is Arjun. Arjun produces an argument, I mean a philosophical argument of tremendous substance, which Arjun himself realizes, but of course he's looking up to Krishna for light on the matter. But Arjuna's argument is absolutely tremendous. And what is it? I mean, let me first of all, go through some of the preliminaries into which lead to Arjuna's argument. One of the preliminaries is the context of the Gita. The context of the Gita is the imminent battle between the armies of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. The two armies battle ready and arrayed against each other, with Arjun, the principal warrior of the Pandavas, positioned between the armies with his chariot driven by none other than Krishna himself. Surveying the two armies led by the warriors who were relatives, friends, teachers of the warriors of both armies. And this is very important. They were relatives, friends, and teachers of armies on both sides of the battle. We must keep this in mind. And Krishna looked at all this, and he dropped his magic bow. And he kind of lapsed into a kind of catatonic. Catatonic, they say he can't do anything. He can't even speak very well. A catatonic kind of stupor. He can't move. He can't do anything. He kind of speechless, not quite speechless, but almost speechless, catatonic. I mean, he's kind of, he goes into a stupor which is difficult to understand. Why does he go into a stupor? Is it just the sight of the two armies which consist of his relatives on both sides of the battle? Certainly this sight, but what is the implication? What is the import of this experience that Arjun has, which leads him into a catatonic stupor? Then he drops his weapon on the floor of the chariot and with a trembling voice, he can't even speak well, with a trembling voice, began to tell Krishna why it is impossible to be a part of this looming battle. He cannot fight this battle. He cannot do it. The two armies, as I just said, consisted of warriors who were related to one another by ties of family and kinship. The war, taken to its logical conclusion, we will destroy these ties. We'll totally destroy this. You taken to logical conclusion means, killing. Everybody destroyed, everybody killed, everybody lost their lives. Then, these family ties do not exist anymore. What is the import of this discovery by Arjun? This destruction of the ties of family and kinship will have an unimaginably perilous and irrecoverable impact on the very idea of humanity itself. Arjun says this. Then there will be no humanity left if families are destroyed. Arjun's sudden but profound realization of this truth was the cause of his complete and instant refusal to take part in the war. So he gets into an emotional kind of, he says, there is an emotional peril, no doubt, and you see his heart is throbbing with emotion of having to get into this battle and kill his family, kill members of his family. But also, it is I would say, it is a philosophical, what should I say, this strong word would be repugnance. So philosophically, he finds it repugnant that families will be destroyed. If families are destroyed, then he would go on to say morality is destroyed. If morality is destroyed, then humanity is destroyed. And he describes the life after humanity is destroyed in this very chapter. Now, it is interesting, Aurobindo is also moved by this Arjun's predicament. Absolutely, what kind of predicament is this? I mean, the predicament is such that Arjun is unable to say anything, do anything. Why? I mean, of course, I talked about, I just mentioned the emotional predicament, the emotional upheaval that goes into his, and that goes on in his heart, but also the philosophical repugnancy, the philosophical predicament. So Aurobindo translates these two verses from 33 to 35 as follows. They, this is part of Arjun's argument, they, for whose sake we desire kingship and enjoyments and delights, do they stand in battle against us, casting away their riches and lives, our teachers and our fathers, and our sons, our grandfathers, and uncles, and fathers of our wives. That's very interesting. He doesn't forget the son, the fathers-in-law. The fathers-in-law are very important. They are the ones who are responsible for the extension of the family into a kin. So, teachers and our fathers and our sons, our grandfathers and uncles and fathers of our wives, our grandsons and their wives, and our grandsons and their wives, brothers and kin of our beloved. That's all very important. These, though they slay me, I would not slay, not for the empire of heaven and space and hell, for heaven and space and hell, much less for this poor earth of ours. This is what Arjun says. So Arjun tells Krishna looks when he is, comes out of his catatonic stupor a little bit, and he is about to speak, and he speaks in a very somber kind of tone of voice, and he says, look, he tells Krishna that the war will see the entire family of the Kauravas and the Pandavas fight against itself, and its end will be the complete destruction of the family. And this will leave no room for the grounding of our moral responsibility and will therefore strike at the very root of any meaningful human existence. This is Arjun's argument. He doesn't say it in so many words, but this is what he means, that there will be no room left for any human existence if the family is destroyed. Why does he say this? It is not just Kurus fighting Pandavas, but great warriors from far and wide, who were nonetheless related by blood to the famous cousins of the Hastinapur. This is Sanjay's description. And thus were part of their extended family, are standing battle ready against one another. And also their teachers and friends. Although friends are not family, they are nonetheless related by ties of love and loyalty. It is important that friends are included. How do friends become part of the family? They are not actually literally part of the family, but they are almost part of the family because they are related by ties of love and loyalty, as in the family. They are nonetheless related by ties of love and loyalty, just as members of the family. And what about the gurus? The acharyas are also there, like Drona. The acharyas must be respected and honored like one respects and honors one's father. So, there are these relatives, extended family, kinship on both sides of the battle, and there are friends of these relatives, and there are these acharyas, the gurus, who are also part of the family. Now, what is so important about the family? That Arjun says, if the family is gone, morality is gone. If the morality is gone, humanity is gone. So that's a tremendous thing to say. What is the importance of the family in our moral consciousness? Now, I would like you to take, moral concepts. For instance, concepts of virtues. Virtue is a kind of quality of character, such as, for instance, truthfulness, kindness, respect, gratefulness, love, courage, generosity, loyalty, humility, and so on. We count them all as really basic part of morality. If you take away truthfulness from the moral life, it is not the moral life at all. If you take away kindness from the moral life, it is not the moral life anymore. If you take away respect, similarly, gratefulness, love, courage, generosity, loyalty, humility, even humility and so on, then you don't have the moral life anymore. So these are, what are these qualities of character which are so important that if you didn't have these qualities of character at all, in your thinking about the moral life, then you are unable to think about the moral life anymore. So there is a kind of very important kind of, what should I say, a conceptual link between these qualities of character and the idea of morality itself. You can't have the idea of morality if you take these away. Now, so some of these characters, some of these qualities of character, as I said, truthfulness, gratefulness, respect, love, courage, and so on. Now, most of them, they are all, I would like to say that they are all primarily grounded in bonds that relations within the family provide. And it is in the family that we might call their perfect manifestation. What we might call their perfect manifestation is exhibited. So, you have within the family, see, these we not just learn the importance of these qualities of character. We not only learn them, but we find that these are grounded in bonds that the family makes it possible for us to develop. If these bonds are not developed, these qualities of character will not manifest in the kind of way I just point out, in the kind of way that they, in their true character, must manifest. So, one might say, well, what would be a perfect manifestation of truthfulness, a perfect manifestation of humility, a perfect manifestation of, say, generosity or courage? There are perfect manifestations of this, and there are also imperfect manifestations. In most cases, it is imperfect manifestations. Well, the child learns about truthfulness, but many a time, when he tells the truth, it may not be the perfect manifestation of truthfulness in his character. It is because he's telling the truth because he's scared of of punishment for telling a lie. He's scared of punishment. And so that is not a perfect manifestation. He's not really telling the truth. He is merely pretending to tell the truth. And pretending to tell the truth, or making out as though he is telling the truth, is not the same thing as telling the truth. So there is a perfect manifestation of truthfulness. Very few people have this perfect manifestation of truthfulness. How many people do you think? It is not just, it is possible that somebody with absolute firmness says, yes, I'm truthful, I'm telling the truth, but yet there might be considerations which may be beyond his consciousness, which are such that are impelling him to be truthful. And so there are considerations of such that, considerations against being truthful. If there are considerations against being truthful, which are such that, although he doesn't recognize them, are forcing them, are moving them into truthfulness, into being truth, then that is not, his truthfulness is not a perfect manifestation of truthfulness. Similarly, generosity, similarly, kindness, similarly, gratitude, similarly, courage. You have an imperfect manifestation of courage, somebody rushing into doing something, which may be just bravado, not courage at all. And a perfect manifestation of courage, which is very different from it. So, does one may be truthful because of any benefits that an act of truthfulness brings to one? The child, his act of truthfulness brings benefits. He's not punished. It's because the mother thinks that he's telling the truth. He's not punished. So, these may be regarded as imperfect manifestations of the quality of truthfulness. But it would be highly misleading to do so. Now, if you say that there are only imperfect manifestations of these qualities of character, what about that? Are we being led into the position that there is really no perfect manifestation of these qualities of character? There are only imperfect manifestations. There are no perfect manifestations because all so-called manifestations of these qualities of character are really, in a certain very deep sense, a really cover for something else, which totally nullifies it from being a manifestation of a character of this sort. But so it would be highly misleading to say that these are only imperfect manifestations. They are not manifestations at all. The person who is truthful because he is afraid of being caught telling a lie, then he's not a truthful character at all. He's a deceitful character. A deceitful character is not capable of being truthful. So these imperfect manifestations are not really manifestations of these qualities of character. They are not manifestations at all. So what the point is, Arjun's point is that it is in the life of the family, in the bonds that the family enables you to develop, that you find these qualities of character or these ideas being grounded. The family is the source of these ideas. Family is also the source of the distinction between the imperfect and perfect manifestation of these ideas. And also the source of the idea that when finally you realize that imperfect manifestation is not a manifestation at all, that it is for the perfect manifestation of these qualities of character that you must endeavor. So that is what the family teaches you. If the family is gone, there is no grounding for this. I mean, you might develop some kind of ideas about these qualities of character, but you don't have a basis, you don't have a grounding, you don't have a matrix which supports the development of these ideas and the distinction, the import of the distinction between perfect manifestation and imperfect manifestation. If this were to happen, if the family goes and there are neither imperfect nor perfect manifestations because there is no need anymore to be truthful, to be honest, and so on. There is no need for imperfect as well as perfect manifestation of these qualities of character. Then what happens? The family collapses, and with the collapse of the family, there is a collapse of the distinction, and finally the collapse of the concepts themselves. So, and what there will be in consequence would be something like this state of nature posited by the British philosopher of the 17th century, whose name is Thomas Hobbes. That is what there will be. There will be a state of nature, which is what Hobbes said, famous words, nasty and brutish, full of violence, people at each other's throat the whole time. That is state of nature. Of course, there are others who said the state of nature need not be like that, but they don't have any arguments for it. Thomas Hobbes' argument, I think, if it is a state of nature, then it has to be like this. But what is the distinction? What will be the difference between Arjuna's imagination of a family-less a human community? It won't be a community anymore, and the state of nature of Hobbes. What is the distinction between the two? Are they the same? They are not quite the same, because for Hobbes, it is, you start with a state of nature. That is the natural being of human life, natural basis of human life. But then state of nature becomes too much for you. You will end up killing each other, and there will be nothing left of human beings. So you come together and you have a contract. You have a contract saying we should shun, to the extent possible, this kind of hostility and violence, and come together and make rules for ourselves. Rules which will prevent us from lapsing into this kind of thing. So first comes state of nature, then you have lawful society, law-abiding society. That's right. What about Arjun? Arjun says it is somewhat on the. Arjun says, you have the family, you have human life, human community, and which is the grounding for the development of moral ideas, like the ideas that I've said, and you destroy the family and you lapse into a state of nature of the Hobbesian variety, and there is no escape from it. Hobbes says there is escape because you come together and form a society, lawful society. Now let me hurry a little bit. Now, what is Krishna's reaction to this? Krishna does not react kind of frontally with what Arjun says. He doesn't talk about family. And one thing he says is very interesting. He says, look, family is okay, but there's something above family, which is the social structure. And what is the social structure? The social structure you have different classes of people in the social structure. Different classes of people with different kinds of necessary functions. Now, now Arjun what is his class? He's a Kshatriya. And he says, if you have, just as a member of family, you have dharma, you have rules of conduct. As a Kshatriya, you have a very, very powerful rule of conduct. And what is this rule of conduct? You have to fight. If it is necessary for you to fight, you have to fight. You have to give up your life in fighting, you do. But then, of course, if you do that, if you fight, then, people will sing your praise. Krishna says, people will sing your praise, and you will actually go to heaven. You'll go to heaven and have a very, very nice life in heaven. So this is but then he stops there. He doesn't anymore dwell with this kind of argumentation. He goes straight into what he thinks is, what is it? I mean, he goes into the absolute, family is certainly basic, but there is something much more basic than family. Much more basic than even a human community. Much more basic. Now, Krishna makes a distinction between the physical world, the world of body, and which is, Sankhya is mentioned, quite misleadingly one might say, that for Sankhya there is the physical world and there is the spiritual, or whatever word that you would like to use. I don't like to use the word spiritual or physical and mental and so on, but I'll tell you the reason why I don't like this. It is this distinction between the physical and what is not the physical. There are two things. I mean, that's what this is. This is not a thing. What is not physical may be a thing or a collection of things. But what is not physical is neither a thing nor a collection of things, which is very different. What is it? So now, this is very different from the Western distinction between the body and the mind. Very, very different. The body and the mind. You see, in the West, the mind, which is not physical, the distinction between the physical and the mental, the mind is the mental and the body is the physical. But in the human being, one is not certain whether it is also the case in the case of animals. People who were responsible for making this distinction, they don't. There are philosophers who make this distinction, and yet, unlike, for instance, Descartes, they were very, very interesting philosophers. For instance, Spinoza said everything has a mental aspect and a physical aspect, not just man, the whole world. There's a physical aspect of the world and there's a mental aspect of the world. They run parallel to each other, whatever. Now, Spinoza is a very interesting philosopher. But anyway, so mental and the physical. The mind is also a thing, according to in Western philosophy. Mind is also a thing. It is an entity, and the body is an entity. Now, how does the mind find a place in the body? It somehow must find a place in the body, because otherwise a human being would be thoughtless, will not be able to think, will not be able to see anything, will not be able to feel anything, and so on. So it is the mind, the thing that exists in the body, which enables the human being to see, to think, see, smell, feel, imagine, and so on. It is the mind with that. Now, this mind-body thing is not good. I mean, I don't know if you have thought about it. I have thought about this a little bit, and in Western philosophy now, people don't believe in this mind-body, mind a thing and the body a thing, and somehow the mind is kind of embedded in the body. I don't think in the West people think of the human being as a conglomeration, as a team of two things, mind, body. So there are all kinds of difficulties with this. If you like, I'm sorry, I'm carrying on. There are all kinds of difficulties. If you like, and if we have time in the discussion, we can talk about these difficulties. Now, there is one philosopher, very, very influential philosopher in the West, in modern West. I'm talking only about modern Western philosophy. One philosopher whose writings have made a kind of extraordinary difference to Western philosophical thinking. I mean, he published one book and philosophy became totally different because of this book. And another book was published. Much of it was published, not published, was known before he died, but it was published after he died. And so then philosophy took a totally different turn altogether. So he is the mover of two philosophical revolutions, modern time. And this fellow's name is Wittgenstein. And I would love to talk about Wittgenstein, but I won't at the moment. So I mention this because he's the one who said, this is, you see, there is somebody who says, Wittgenstein believed in the no ownership doctrine of the human being. That is, there is nothing which owns mental attributes. It is the body. If you like, it is the body which owns them. But Wittgenstein doesn't elaborate on this. But he says there is another kind of possibility, which is, it is not as though the body, the physical world exhausts reality. There is reality beyond the physical world. And what kind of reality is it? It is, he would like to say, it is mystical reality. Now, what about mystical reality? Can you talk about it? Wittgenstein says, no, we can't talk about it. But if we can't talk about it, how? I mean, what can we do about it? He says, we can, you see, there are people who seek this kind of mystical reality. And if they seek with utmost sincerity and honesty, then we can only respect such people. We cannot denounce them as seeking the nonsensical, seeking utter nonsense, that they are not mad people. Only mad people seek nonsense. They are profound people. So he says this encounter, as it were, with the mystical is an encounter of profundity. It is not an encounter of knowledge. It's an encounter of profundity. Now, so Wittgenstein, for instance, he thought that somebody like Kierkegaard, you must know, you must have heard about him, or Tolstoy, they had this profound kind of encounter with the non-physical, with the mystical. Now how do I? So this is he says, well, it is this that is given to a human being. Now we also know that at very many points, the Gita says that thought or the what is beyond reality, and we might say Atman. Now, I don't like the translation of Atman as the self. The moment you talk about the self, you have the entire philosophy of the self in the West. Atman is not the self. Brahman is also not the self. So what is it? So, you have to find some other word for it. So, he says Atman is abhyakta and achinta. Atman cannot be spoken about, and it cannot even be thought about. That is the mystical. It cannot be spoken about, it cannot be thought about. So then, and it is human beings who, I mean, there may be creatures other than human beings who are equal to this. It is human beings are creatures who have this ability to make this distinction between something that can be thought about, something that can be conceived, and something that cannot be thought about, something that cannot be conceived. And it is the pursuit of this Abhyakta and Achinta, the Atman, the Brahman. It is the pursuit of this that is really, truly the basis of morality. That morality has to spring from a realization of the reality, which is Abhyakta and Achinta. So how now he says, Krishna says, you have to prepare yourself for it. You cannot just say, well, I am seeking the Abhyakta and Achinta. I'm not seeking the Abhyakta and Achinta. I have to prepare yourself. I have to absolute. It is a tremendously difficult way of life. The seeking of the absolute, the seeking of the Abhyakta and Achinta. Wittgenstein uses the word absolute. He says the goodness, for instance, is absolute. Absolute in the sense that it is not relative, that is, it is not conditioned by space and time. It is not conditioned by what can be seen and what can be conceived and what can be thought. That is absolute goodness. So, and similarly, I mean, there are people who believe that there is such a thing as absolute goodness, the sea. And there are people who believe that, for instance, Wittgenstein also says there's something like absolute safety. There are people who seek absolute safety. They say, there is such a thing as absolute safety. I know it. And such a person who has found it says he's not afraid of anything at all in this world. That nothing can harm him in this world. Nothing at all can harm him. That is absolute safety. And this is not a nonsensical idea. It is not a nonsensical idea. And similarly, how do I train myself for this? How do I orient my life in such a way that I become a seeker of this absolute. Now, to orient myself for this, I need to think of myself as a physical being who acts in this world. I mean, I'm in this world, I have to act. Without acting, I cannot be a human being. It is human being's nature to be acting. Now, what is the meaning of action? Actions are intended. They are intended for one thing or another. But talking a little bit more basically, I act in a certain way because this action is going to bring me some kind of pleasure, some kind of benefit to myself. And similarly, I can also act in such a way that I can detach myself in my action from any thought about benefit to myself. Can I do this? Okay, I can't. Now, I can do it in small ways, but in general, it is extraordinarily difficult for me to do it. It is extraordinarily difficult for anybody to do it. Anybody to say that he acts only in such a way that his action, he detaches himself from any benefit that this action is going to bring him, not even pleasure that is going to bring it. So, now, you can think of, for instance, you think it is not just action which I do because it is going to bring me benefit, but also actions which I don't think are meant for my benefit. I detach myself from thinking about the benefits of this action. For instance, you have social workers, politicians, politics. And politicians always say his job is to work for the good of the people. His job is not to work just for the good of himself. That is, he detaches himself from the good. But of course, most politicians, if not all, they are deceitful. Deceitful in the sense they deceive themselves into thinking that they are doing things for people other than themselves, but not really so. And so there is deceit. So if I consider the possibility of deceitfulness, then it is possible that even when I think that I am doing something not for any benefit that it might bring to me, but because I think it should be done, but it may be that I am deceiving myself. That deceitfulness is also a universal character in what Krishna says. For instance, this is what he says. Kama. Kama means, this is again Aurobindo's translation, kama means desire. The insatiable fire that besieges your action. The eternal enemy of knowledge, that's deceitfulness. Kama prevents you from knowing. Obviously, if it is driven by kama, it prevents you from knowing. So, eternal enemy of knowledge, by which it is covered here in your nature, as is a fire by smoke. Fire is covered by smoke, or a mirror by dust, or an unborn child by coal. Unborn child by this thing. So, your actions, much as you might think they are totally unselfish in the sense that they are not done for your own benefit, they may be totally, completely deceitful in these ways. Now, does it remind you of any philosopher? Just before I forget, I'll tell you about the Sankhya view of the distinction between the mind and the body. It is not quite Sankhya, but partly, in a kind of misleading sort of way, it's Sankhya. So, mind is a part of Prakriti. You just heard in Bindu's lecture. Mind is a part of Prakriti, especially mind. Mind is a part of Prakriti. Mind is not a part of the Atman. It is not a part of the whatever it is. Mind is a part of Prakriti, a special apparatus of the body. This mind is a special apparatus of the body. It is not something other than the body. It is not an entity which is something other than the body. There are three constituents of the mind. The first is manas, mind itself, ahankara and buddhi. Mind, ego and intellect. They are all constituents of the apparatus of the body. All three are involved in episodes and states like sensations, emotions and feelings. Buddhi particularly, not thinking, planning and non-thinking, planning, imaging and ahankara in laying claims to possessions. Ahankara is not an entity. Ahankara is not an entity, is merely the function of the appropriation of the attributes of the outer constituents. Ahankara is... okay. So I'll finish just now. Ahankara is not an entity, is merely the function of the appropriation of the attributes of the constituents. The three constituents of the apparatus are parts of the body, and there is no entity other than the body that owns them, unlike in Western philosophy. So it is. But Western philosophy is changing now. Western philosophy, I mean, of course, influence of science and technology and so on. You have artificial intelligence. Very soon you'll just have intelligence, not artificial, just intelligence. It is a part of the body. It's part of the mechanism. It's part of the body. So Western philosophy is becoming closer to the Indian view of the mind. Now, so I want to end by saying just one thing. So, what is this that we are seeking? And human beings are, as it were, you see, they are not. They cannot realize the full potential of being human unless they are seeking this absolute. Otherwise, they are not fully human. Only when they realize that they must seek this absolute, then they become human. Now, so sometimes it is said that this thing that they are seeking is Sat, truth, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda. Now, I don't quite know how to fit Sat, Chit, and Ananda into this, but one might say that, well, it is something like ecstasy. Ecstasy that we have. Ecstasy also is, I don't know, it is Sat in the sense that it is there, and Chit. There is consciousness and there is Ananda, total Ananda. So I can think about a physical, within the physical world, we can find room for the idea of ecstasy. Now I have a paragraph here which I have from a writer, a modern European writer who writes in French and also his native language. I don't know what his native language is. Maybe it is Czech. And also he writes in English, Kundera. Kundera is I like him. He's a postmodern, if you like, writer of fiction. I'll end this by this. He says, ecstasy means being outside oneself, which is true. As indicated by the Greek word, that is, ecstasy is a Greek word, the act of leaving one's position, that is stasis, act of leaving my position, to be outside oneself does not mean outside the present moment, like a dreamer escaping into the past or the future. It is not like that. In dream also, I escape the present stasis, present position. I can go into the past, I can go into the future, I can go, I can travel, I can be in two places at the same time, and so on. But that is not ecstasy. That is some kind of out of the body experience which you have only in dreams and hallucinations. To be outside oneself does not mean outside the present moment, like a dreamer escaping into the past or the future. Just the opposite. Ecstasy is the absolute identity with the present. It is absolute identity with the present instant, and total forgetting of past and future. If we obliterate the future and the past, the present moment stands in empty space, outside life and chronology, outside time and independent of it. This is why it can be likened to eternity, which is negation of time. That's my intrusion. We are used to connecting the notion of ecstasy to great mystical moments, which I have just talked about, but there is such a thing as everyday, ordinary, vulgar ecstasy. The ecstasy of anger, the ecstasy of speed at the wheel. We know the dangers of such ecstasy. The ecstasy of ear-splitting noise, ecstasy in the cricket stadium. I don't know what is happening in the cricket stadium today. Today India is playing Zimbabwe. Living is a perpetual effort not to lose sight of ourselves, to stay solidly present in ourselves, in our stasis. Step aside, outside ourselves for a mere instant, and we verge on death's domain. That is Milan Kundera. But for the Gita, ecstasy, it is, stepping out to the present, which is an extraordinarily difficult task. You have to be engaged in actions of the kind that I said, and you have to get yourself established in this kind of behavior. When you are established completely in total detachment from fruits of action, that you are given the benefit of a vision of this world. You're only given the benefit, you're not, but you have to be completely established in it. When you might earn the honor of being liberated. This word. So you are liberated. So this liberation, let me finish by saying this. This liberation is very difficult from liberation of either Freud or Marx. I talked about Freud. You see, Freudian liberation consists of, Freud also talks about karma. Karma is very important for him. He says karma and deceit, self-deception. I live by self-deception. And liberation consists in removing my self-deception, winning over my self-deception, and putting everything before me in our consciousness. When I put my karma, all my horrible impulses in front of me, in my conscious view of them, then I achieve liberation in the sense that I am then in a position to accept. I am in a position to address these impulses of mine in such a way that they do not overwhelm me anymore. I put them in their place. But there is another way of putting them in my place, putting them in their place, in the sense of what is called, in the morning I was looking for this word because I have forgotten it, sublimation. I can sublimate my wishes. And what is the sublimation? The sublimation is creativity. I can create worlds which are such that my wishes, my horrible wishes and impulses are sublimated into these beautiful works of art. So that is sublimation for Freud. But then, my liberation consists in not escaping my bondage. Freud also talks about bondage. I remain within the bondage of my earthly life, but within the bondage of my earthly life, I can just live life in such a way that that they don't, in a certain sense, they don't bother me in the way that they would bother me if they were in my unconscious. But anyway, Sadhu, I won't talk about Marx. I wanted to talk about Marx's liberation as well. Marx's liberation is also not liberation. It is also bondage. And Freud's liberation is also bondage. The only liberation that is not bondage is the Gita
Gita's liberation.
Okay.
So I think we can discuss it in the questions. We can open it to questions first, Anshika, 2 minutes. So we'd just like to ask, have 1 or 2 questions. I think Rakesh Chandraji wants to ask a question. Yeah, you just ask, we'll hear you.
Thank you so much for, as usual, an extremely exciting deliberation. And I was really wondering that some of the very fascinating concepts that you brought in And I was wondering that how would you like to say something more about that? Like the relationship that you brought in between the perfect manifestation and imperfect manifestation, how would you like to relate it to the idea of perfect and imperfect duty in Kant? The other thing that I've always thought, which would be, in fact, up your street, is that when Russell talks about ethics finally being only rules of convenience for living, and a more foundational view that you find in Kant and Gita, how would you respond to that? One more thing which I think always worries us, looking at the two heroes of our epics, Ram and Krishna, you find Arjuna speaking for family values fairly akin to Ram, who would say that the duty towards my mother, duty towards my brother, duty towards my children. So the Arjun Krishna could well be Ram and Krishna when it could be in with reference to these two things. And one more thing which I think has been discussed in philosophy circles for a very long time, and you have also responded to that. The Gita itself, because this kind of thing which you emphasize right now, that the only liberation that we need to seek is the liberation from the smallest self. But if you look at, and as you were looking at from chapter to chapter, the first chapter seems to be saying, okay, if the worldly things do for you, jitva va bhokshase mahim, if Arjun had agreed, the Gita's Upadesh would have been jitva va bhokshase mahim. He did not. And then you have this idea that no, sarvan dharman parityajya mamemu sharanam vraja, which is in fact a desire for submission. And even when he doesn't do that, then there's this deontological thing of karmanyeva adhikaraste. And when he still doesn't do that, then there's this huge Virat Roop, which is in fact asking for submission, which I think is pedagogically one of the worst kind of things which vice chancellors do to teach us, saying that you don't know who I am. So this authoritativeness. And so the taking away of the agency, as it were, by the authority in Gita. So there are several messages, and I'm sure you are very well aware of that. I was just wondering that as one of the most astute teachers of analysis and one of the most brilliant philosophers that we have, how would you respond to all of that? And would you, in fact, go back to what you said at the beginning, that actually Gita is not one, but a collection of many essays?
Just ask if there's any other question. Yeah, I think she wants to ask a question, then you can answer together.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, for that brilliant exposition. I was just wondering, post Professor Rakesh Chandra's queries, that can we really foreground Gita's concept of family morality, what we are coming across as relational ontology in today's day and time? Can we look at it from that point of view? So just that, sir.
Remarkably nicely pointed out about the predicament of Arjun, and the description of his situation is pretty graphic in the first chapter. Is shivering and the hair standing on end, and so that is very much there. He cannot hold his Gandhi anymore, it falls on the floor, and he says, I don't know what to do. And he, even towards the end of the first chapter, I can think, or in the beginning of the second chapter, goes on into saying that that now I'm surrendered to you, and please instruct me. And that is when Krishna comes up with a rather, I would say, interesting response. I would ask your opinion, and how would you feel about it? He says, Asochananva sochastam pragyavadam shibhasase gatasum agatasum aschananu sochanti pandita. So he is basically saying you talk like a learned man, but you're rather basically stupid. And those who are really learned, they worry neither about the dead nor living. Those who have gone or not, things that has passed, or the things that are yet to come. So the consequences that he talks about in the first chapter of the destruction of the family, and then as a result, the things that will come later on. So this response of Krishna in this kind of a situation, how do you feel about it?
I think you can now reply.
Yeah. The first question about duty and and what is, what can I say, what is right. Duty for duty's sake, and perfect, not perfect duty, but a perfect attribute of moral, moral life. One of the perfect attributes of moral life. Well, I don't think the Gita talks very much about duty, does it? It does. It does talk about duty later on. But duty, in the sense of dharma as duty, and this also appears in the Gita time and again, but that's different from what I've talked about perfect and imperfect manifestation of qualities of character, like goodness and so on. Duty as rules of conduct. Obviously, when you're talking about perfect and imperfect manifestation, you're also talking about, in a certain sense, rule. But these rules are such that they are not, duty for duty's sake might be something like this, but it isn't. They are not conditioned by temporality and spatial aspects. They're not conditioned. So duty, even duty for duty's sake, would be duty for doing something here and now for the sake of duty. But being absolutely truthful in the truth in the absolute sense, as something which is outside the spatio-temporal world. Is that part of duty or not? Either to say, to confine it to a discussion, to a discourse of duty would be somewhat kind of misleading. It would be somewhat misleading. So that's what at the moment I want to say. And secondly, about the other thing, the thing you said, the Gita is not one stream of thought produced by somebody, but it contains several streams, if not streams, but several kind of profusions of thought produced by different people at different times, which would be a bit of an exaggeration, but it may be, to a certain extent, it may be defended. It may be defensible. I would like to say this. So I have not gone into Gita scholarship. As I said, I read only extremely haltingly the Gita, and much of it I don't understand. I have to go back to the dictionary and so on and translations. So, and the thing about, I'm sorry, I'm skipping the others. They are also very important. I'd like to be able to answer them, but it is kind of going to be 9 o'clock now. So this question about relativity. Relativity, relational. Relational, yes, of course, morality is a relational thing. For it to be relational is something different from for it to be relative. Relativity is different from being relational. You see, truthfulness, or so for instance, humility. Humility is kind of manifested in this mundane world of ours. So it is humility in the face of something or other. There are other human beings and other things. You cannot be humble if there are no human beings. If there are no human beings to appreciate the idea that you are being humble. But humility can be such also. The humility of the seeker of God is totally humble. He falls on the dust. Even that is not enough. Even that is not sufficient. This is also something that Wittgenstein said. You see, this is what humility means. But I can't be humble in that way. So I can't be a seeker of truth or a seeker of whatever. Because I'm a very, very boastful kind of person. And I cannot rid myself of this boastfulness of mine. If you read the preface to the philosophical investigation, you'll see how boastful he is. He's extraordinarily boastful. He says, I cannot be humble, but he understands what true humility means, and he cannot be truly humble. That's why he doesn't know.
So very briefly now. You can't just go into it for one.
You articulated in the sincerity of and philosophical kind of depth of Arjun's argument, which are very, very strong argument, and then you see a knee-jerk reaction coming.
Krishna. Krishna, of course, this is a kind of jocular kind of thing. You see, you're talking about family. What about you are a Kshatriya. What about being Kshatriya? Krishna doesn't go on to say anything, but Kshatriya gives you all kinds of things. It gives you honor, it gives you name, and it gives you a place in heaven. Sorry. But he forgets about it. Yes, he says Arjuna is dim. He doesn't see things. He's really dim. And so he lacks clarity of thinking, clarity of vision. It is this clarity of vision that he must acquire. So in that sense, he is dim. But nonetheless, if Arjuna is part of this mundane world, then he must recognize Arjuna is saying that if you're part of this world, then you must see that, you see, without the family, you cannot get going with morality at all. It is because you have a family, you are in a family, because family is there as a human community. It is because you have a family with all these bonds that morality gets going. Otherwise, morality cannot get going.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful lecture. As we move towards the conclusion of today's program, a formal vote of thanks will be delivered by Sangeeta Gupta ma'am, expressing our collective gratitude to all the dignitaries and participants who have contributed to the success of this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Before we conclude, I have the honor to propose the vote of thanks. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Professor Mrinal Miri for his gracious presence and inspiring guidance. His insightful and thought-provoking address offered deep philosophical perspectives and enriched today's lecture. Sir, your presence has added both direction and depth to this program. We are grateful to our chief guest, Professor Nataraju Adarasupally, though he was unable to join us today. We thank Professor Bindu Puri, Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and co-convenor of IHC ICPR Study Circle Lecture Series for her academic guidance and continued support to this lecture series and for framing the theme so clearly and meaningfully. We are grateful to the Indian Council of Philosophical Research for its supports and collaboration. Our sincere thanks to Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, Director, India Habitat Center, for his visionary leadership, encouragement, and continuous guidance. My thankful to Mr. Sandeep Tandon, Habitat World CEO, and the Habitat Program Division for their continued support. We also thank Shri Sandeep Kapoorji, Deputy Director and Finance Team, Amanat Sir, Gita Ma'am, and HLRC team. Our appreciation goes to the video and photography team and technical and sound team and every member of the Habitat staff. Our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed audience, scholars, members, and students, whose presence adds meaning, warmth, and purpose to initiatives like this. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. We look forward to your participation in the upcoming sessions of the IHC ICPR Study Circle Lecture Series. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad.